Good afternoon, everyone out in Facebook, and welcome to the Denton County Friends of the Family community conversation that we offer twice a month on various topics of interest to our community. We are here today to talk about the Faith for Freedom campaign. And we're excited, and I'm excited that the transitioning of that program has come to my desk and continuing with the work that I have had the opportunity to do with our faith-based leaders and communities and churches within the DFW area. For those of you who may be tuning in for the first time in support of our panelists, our agency is committed to providing compassionate and comprehensive services to those impacted by domestic violence and sexual assault. And we do that while partnering with the community to promote safety, hope, healing, justice, and prevention. And so some of those partnerships are present today, and there are many more that we'll be hearing from throughout the year as a part of our Faith for Freedom campaign. And you might ask, well, what exactly does Faith for Freedom mean? And I'm going to explain that to you. And while we're doing this broadcast, we're just going to be speaking like we're sitting around the kitchen table pre-COVID and able to commune together and chat with each other without reservation. And if there are questions or comments that you may have that you want to contribute to the discussion, we have people here that are helping us with watching those comments, and any questions that may come up for which we don't have an answer, we'll be glad to get that back to you and post that within the feed of this discussion. So going back to Faith for Freedom, as I mentioned, it landed at my desk, and this campaign that we've had before where we reach out and work with faith-based communities to give support to the work that we do for victims of domestic violence and sexual assault, and very key to the area where I work, which is the prevention, education, and awareness program, is to provide information, to provide knowledge and understanding about the resources that we have available, such that people do not feel that there's nowhere that they can turn if they are unfortunately a victim, or if they know someone, or that they have to go through this process of healing and getting help by themselves. We have been doing this since 1980, so we're not new to this work, and we have remained committed to it, such that what we provide as a service is considered to be an essential function, because during the pandemic, we did not shut down our offices or our services, other than having to change the way in which we interacted using verbal formats, social formats like this as Zoom. We did not have to ask anyone to leave from the shelter. Our shelter was full at the onset, and so we just did a pivot, and those wonderful community partners help us to provide masks, cleaning supplies to our residents who were in shelter. We made a way to give services to our clients. And so we all did I think the most used word probably for this pandemic is pivot. So we all did a pivot and said, we got to keep providing, because what we know to be true, and the research that is ongoing, is that being sheltered at home was not necessarily a safe place for victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. And so it became even more important for people to have access to us. Therefore, our crisis hotline, we changed that such that people can text message us, because it's going to be easier probably to make a text, send a text for help, as opposed to making a call and the abuser is there and can overhear you. So going back to Faith for Freedom, there are three primary goals with this campaign, and that is to raise awareness of domestic violence in congregations across the county and make our services known to any potential victims. Two, to build a relationship of trust between the faith communities and our agency in order to know how to connect clients with the congregation of their faith and access to community resources, and also to help raise funds or collect essential items for the clients that we serve through maybe special offerings or through a call. I may pick up the phone and call one of you and say, we have a shortage of this within our shelter. Can your any of your ministries provide, do a collection and provide that? And so we've done that before, and I really appreciate that. And I know that it's something that we can continue. So with that said, I would like to introduce you, Facebook, to our esteemed panelists that are available and have been working with our agency and are committed to continuing to do so. You may recognize some of the faces, some might be new. So let me just introduce them according to how they are shown on my screen. I have with us Reverend Kristen Golly. She is the incoming brand new pastor at First Christian Church here in Denton, moved here from Brenham and is now working her way to become a Dentonite. And so had opportunity to spend some time with her. So Kristen, thank you for being here. I'll circle back around and let you further introduce yourself and what First Christian Church does with regard to assisting with our efforts. Next, coming to us from Flower Mound is Reverend Jake Clausen. He is sitting in his backyard. Earlier, I asked him, was he sitting in the patio of the church there in Flower Mound, because I did a presentation from that spot and it looked familiar. But Reverend Clausen is an advocate for the rights of victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. And on Facebook, I've had an opportunity to share some of his posts as it relates to his commitment to addressing overall social injustices. So Jake, thank you for being here as well. I have the president of the Denton area and vicinity Ministerial Alliance and the pastor of Mount Calvary Baptist Church here in Denton, Pastor Cedric Chambers. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your leadership as the president of the acronym DAVID, Denton Area and Vicinity Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance, and for the work that you've allowed our agency to do and the support that has been given. And so I'll circle back around to you as well. A ministry called Val's House, I was introduced to a few years ago through Stephanie as well as Lynette, and had a wonderful time spending time with their conferences and networking and providing information during those conferences. And so Stephanie is in Arlington, just recently moved. And so we thank you for taking time away from that. We know how demanding that can be, to be a part of this discussion on this afternoon. And then coming to us from Dallas, specifically Lancaster, is Lady Ella Thorpe, who is the First Lady and co-pastor of the Berea Church in Lancaster, who has done and is doing a lot of work within Dallas. And knowing that there are persons in Dallas who may live specifically in Denton County or come to their church for services, has invited me to be a presenter doing the programs there, as well as us inviting she and Pastor Thorpe to be a part of the programs that we offer here. And so we'll circle back around to you as well. Again, thank you all for being here. So what I'd like for you to do as I call your name out is, again, to just give a brief introduction of, who you are, and specifically about your commitment to helping your members to be more aware of domestic violence and sexual assault and what's available to them. Often we hear people say that, within their church congregations, that maybe there's some churches have a great understanding where there's some who are not. Some may go to their leadership and are told, let's just pray about it, which prayer is essential. But in addition to the prayer, how is that prayer supported through, faith works? And how do we get to a place of, providing the necessary information and resources to the clients that we serve that are a part of your congregation? And so I'm going to start with you, Pastor Chambers. Since you and I think, have had, other than Lady Ella, have had the longest working relationship, and we've done multiple things together as you, the pastor of Mount Calvary and the president of David. So tell us a little bit about David. Tell us a little bit about Mount Calvary and the outreach work you do, and how it came about your being faithful and committed to being supportive of Denton County Friends of the Family and the impact that that can have on your members.
Thank you, Cassandra. Good afternoon to each of you. Thank you for allowing me to speak. A lot of things we do here at the Mount Calvary Church, as well as David, is very broad, very ministry-minded church, as well as our alliance. And we came to know Cassandra several years ago as we start to discover how real domestic violence is. A lot of times when you're not part of that world, you sweep that under the rug, and it's really not important because, your family is not involved in domestic violence. Your children are not involved in domestic violence. But it wasn't until we started reaching out through ministry, through our church and through the alliance, that we discovered that domestic violence is real, and it's in the church. Let me say it again. It's in the church. There are Christian husbands and wives who are part of domestic violence, and it wasn't until then that we sought out some help, and Miss Cassandra Berry was right there on the spot to come in and to bring us information, to come in and send speakers in. She said something earlier that we perish because of the lack of knowledge. And one of the things that were very important to us and our parishioners is that we were educated on domestic violence, that domestic violence don't have a look. It does not have a dress. It does not have a certain hairstyle. And so once she was able to educate us, and we started learning more and started getting information from Denton County Friends of the Family, we can refer people to her, their ministry, their commitment to seeing families and domestic violence resolved. And so thus we got involved. We're committed because she has allowed us through education, number one, to be able to help identify what domestic violence is, and then to point them in the right direction. We do know that the ultimate goal is Jesus Christ, but there's counseling needed, and a lot of times when we discovered through education that it's all right to have Jesus and need counseling. It's okay to be saved and need counseling. And so I have to say kudos to Cassandra, because through their education, she made us aware of that. Sometimes we can say, hey, let's just give it to Jesus. Well, sometimes there's counseling involved as well, and giving it to Jesus. So because of that, we're fully committed to Cassandra and Denton County Friends of the Family, and whatever they're doing, we certainly would like to be a part of it, and will continue to be a part of it.
I appreciate that, and I often let you know, Pastor Chambers, how much I appreciate our working relationship and allowing us to form this partnership. And one of the things that you said is so key, and within the African American community, but also generally within the faith-based community, sometimes there's a stigma around counseling because it may be perceived as weakness or having a lack of faith in what you believe in as relates to God. And
Right.
so to have the reality of that, of the impact that counseling has been really helpful, and it helps our clients to be more willing to accept the services that are free to them, as it relates to counseling, not only for themselves but for their children as well. And so 4 years ago, when we had a low percentage rate of participation of our clients, specifically, I'm talking now specifically about African Americans, that participation rate has increased because we're hearing from people like you and from the pulpit that you're not denying what God can do in your life by
Right.
going to counseling. You are supporting that. And so I really appreciate that. And as an individual church and as a ministry, you're giving financial resources to promote our awareness programs, such as an evening of raised awareness that we do in February, and being able to pick up the phone because I have your cell number and say, we need some products over here, or I'm going to need you to please help, or hey, I see you're passing out food again. I missed the last couple of times. Can I come by and give out information? And for you to be willing to do that has been really helpful in us seeing our participation rates get better. And so thank you for your commitment and your knowing the value of faith for freedom. I'd like to now go over to Arlington and talk to Stephanie Figgins, because I'm not sure, Stephanie, you know how you get to know people and you look back, you think, when did we meet and how did that happen? Because we connect so well and it's so organic that we don't even think about when it happened. But reaching out and I don't know if I saw the information for Val's House Conference and I contacted you all or you contacted me, but however it happened, thankfully it did. And through that was able to speak at your conferences as well as meet some of the people who were there who had been not only helped by our agency, but, then it empowered them to be able to be, move away from shame and guilt, which is often the case of victims, to be able to talk about that and then to be willing to advocate to others, hey, seek help. It's okay. So, hey, Stephanie from Arlington who just moved, tell us a little bit more about Val's House and your commitment to the work that we're doing.
Yes. Hey, Cassandra, and hey, everyone. Val's House was basically founded to provide women a safe place to express their feelings, to get hope and healing, to use love and lots of laughter. We use lots of laughter. But it's more of a transparent community, and we're made up of all different kinds of denominations, peoples. Just come on over. It's like joining in at your grandmother's table and just having that conversation without your mask, with everything. But our goal was to set this atmosphere where you are valued, accepted, and loved, just as you are, no matter what your present or past situation held. To accomplish this, we have weekly support group meetings. We do retreats, uplifting conferences, which we're so thankful that Cassandra, you could come and give us information, and family retreats. We also have more of a digital footprint now that everyone has had to pivot. And we have a podcast titled Life with Me, Myself, and I Am. And I believe Cassandra is going to be on it soon, which would be great for all of us to get the word out. Like you said, us being in this pandemic, it has been dangerous for some people to be at home, and having a way to express that and a way to get help has been wonderful. And we really appreciate friends of the family and being able to do that with a lot of people we know. People will call us and be in that kind of situation. And from our relationship, we've been able to send them to you to get the help that they need. And See, I'm a crier. I'm sorry. I just so appreciate you, Cassandra, and everything that Friends and Family does. To the point, and I got permission to share this, even those in leadership need to know it's okay to seek help. A lot of people, like you were saying, think it's a stigma or it's shameful or whatever. No, it is not. Even our founder found help at Friends and Family, and we are truly blessed because of it. Now, we first met Sandra, and she was, we were considering speakers for our Stir It Up conference, and we called her and said if she wanted to come and visit with us, because our verse for that conference was from Hebrews 10:25 through 24 and 25. Let us stir up one another to love and do good works, not neglecting to meet together, but encouraging one another. And you really have to build those relationships with people in order for them to trust you enough that when they do ask for help, you can point them in the right direction. And they trust you to actually go and get that help. Because a lot of people, even when you suggest it, won't go, won't contact, will stay where they're at. And until it gets to a point where it's imperative that they go and get help. But the earlier that people can get with Friends and Family, the more healing that they can get for their family and their kids and themselves. And it's not just women, it's also men. And that's one thing that you brought up at our conference, Cassandra, is there's men and women who go through this, and both of them are served through the Friends and Family. And not many people understand that. They only think it's for women, but it's really for both. And we really appreciate everything you guys do.
And thank you for making that point, Stephanie, because when we talk about comprehensive services and having partnerships, it is through those partnerships with some of the area hotels that we're able to provide safe accommodation for male victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. Even when we get an opportunity to provide even safety for the family pet, there may be, well, I'm afraid that, we were told by, Dad, that if we leave that, something may happen to the pet. So any of you out there who are willing to foster safely pets, that would want to be on a list for us to reach out to, we welcome that. Our principle is not to house the female clients and children with the males, and so when we have a situation where accommodations for a safe environment is needed for males, that working with the area hotels. And one of the churches, Pastor Chambers, within the group of David, before they even called us, there was an immediate need, and they said, "Well, Cassandra, we went ahead and put him in a hotel. We're referring to you, but I wanted you to know what we were doing because there was like right now in the middle of the night, and we weren't sure how quickly that would take place." And so that spoke to being able to see the need, meet the need, and then partner with us to continue with that. And so thank you for bringing that up. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the next being on the podcast, and once we get back to doing conferences, being with you all again, because I brought my mom and my daughter, and we all had a wonderful experience with your Stir It Up conference. So thank you. Okay, let's go over to Flower Mound. Jake, do you live specifically in Flower Mound proper?
I live in Louisville, but the church is there right on Morris Road across from the high school.
Yes. Well, Thank you too for being here, and thank you for being one of our Faith for Freedom partners. And so tell us a little bit about your work, what you do as a congregation to provide information to your parishioners and your relationship with us, Denton County Friends of the Family.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. I've been Flower Mound, Louisville area now for 4 years. And actually, so the church, of course, like a lot of churches, we have our sort of fingers in a lot of different pies when it comes to mission partners and things like that. But Denton County Friends of the Family was probably the very first mission partner that I learned about when I got to Flower Mound, because a handful of our people had bought a table or something at a fundraiser, and they were like, hey, you should come to this fundraiser with us. And it was for Denton County Friends of the Family. So that was one of my very first introductions. And so I learned a lot about the mission of Denton County Friends of the Family, and of course was not only impressed, but grateful for all of the work that you all do. We have had a partnership with Denton County Friends of the Family for about 5 years now. Our partnership with y'all is rather new, and we've done drives, and I think we regularly make monetary donations, but also I think that the part of this that is so important and really central to this particular initiative is the education piece. I've lived in sort of two different church worlds in my life, and the first was a more conservative view of church and human relations, and then now in the Presbyterian church, things are different. So, but they all have their pitfalls, right? So when I was a younger person, I think the problem was that we read about half of the verses in Ephesians 5 about how wives are supposed to submit to their husbands, and forgot all about the part where husbands are supposed to love their wives as Christ loves us, right? So that part was, we got amnesia. And so these things, and in that particular church community, people were really open and honest about their struggles. And what we found, or what I saw, was that those concerns were so often brushed aside, using, unfortunately, the scriptures as justification for that. Well, he's your husband, this is how it is, and that sort of abuse. And unfortunately, the church has to deal with and reckon with its misuse of the scriptures in that way. In the situation in which we find ourselves now, or which I find myself now, and where I lead, it's not that, that is not our problem. Our problem is that folks are too concerned with how they might be viewed should they come forward with this information, right? We want to present ourselves in a way that makes it seem like our lives are great. Look at me, everything is perfect in my life. And so it's really incumbent upon the church, and this is something that we've been working hard at, to make the cliche have legs, right? That the church isn't a hotel for saints, but a hospital for sinners, right? Like we are all broken people, and bad stuff happens in all of our lives, and we are all desperately in need of grace and of transformation that comes in the knowledge and love of God. So this is our goal, right? Because there are people that we know, people that sit in our pews, that struggle with domestic, maybe not violence, but certainly abuse at times. And so to make folks feel comfortable to come forward with that information, to talk to somebody about that information, not feeling like it's a failure. And so, yeah, that's sort of where we are. And so we are just grateful that you all have provided resources, not only for us to say, hey, here are some people in the community that will talk to you about this, but if this happens, or if this is happening, here's a safe place for you to go. Because our church's financial resources only go, we don't have the partnerships with hotels, we don't have a shelter, but we are so grateful to have people in the community who are working to that end. And so we are really, really grateful, Cassandra, for you and the work of Friends and Family, and that you're sort of reviving this Faith for Freedom initiative, because I think unwittingly, the church in a lot of ways has been part of the problem and not part of the solution. So if we can be part of the solution here, let it be so, right?
Thank you for being transparent about that being a part of the solution, as opposed to perpetuating someone to remain in a relationship. And toward the end, we'll talk about some of these myths versus realities around that. One of the key things that you said, Pastor Clausen, was with regard to, you know, violence and abuse. What a lot of people don't know, and we're working diligently to continue with the dissemination of information, is that there are primarily 4 types of domestic abuse. It includes the verbal. You know, some of us, probably all of us on this call, were raised with the adage, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt. And we know that not to be true, because oftentimes when people are in counseling, it's more about the negative words that have been spoken to them as opposed to the physical violence. So one of the 4 main categories is verbal abuse. And so for someone to come to their faith leadership and that be dismissed is a disservice to the congregant, because that of the impact that verbal abuse can have. The next would be the psychological abuse, the emotional abuse. You know, condemning someone maybe for their weight, or maybe you know, doing things that's called gaslighting to make them think that their reality is a figment of their imagination, you know, lowering of their self-esteem. And so those 2 areas of the 4 are not as familiar. And when people go to persons, not just within the faith-based community, you know, it's like, shake it off, or this whole thing again about sticks and stones, when we know that that's not accurate. And then you have the physical and the sexual abuse. And so to be able to address being under the power and control, because domestic violence and sexual assault is about power and control. And so to have someone to be under the power and control of the person with whom they're in a relationship, and they're experiencing the verbal and the psychological, that could likely escalate to the physical and the sexual, which could escalate to an end of life. You know, in 2019, 150 women were killed at the hands of their intimate partner.
Wow.
I would say, I don't have the specifics, but I would say that a large percentage of those began with the verbal and the psychological, and the lack of getting help, and knowing that those are points of escalation to something that could create end of life, is something that we need to communicate within our spheres of influence. So thank you for bringing that out. I'm going to go now to Reverend Kristen Golly. Again, welcome to Denton. Welcome to First Christian Church. Have a beautiful relationship with First Christian Church. And so tell us a little bit about your work around domestic violence and sexual assault, and what your congregation has informed you about what they've been doing in that regard, and how you have come on board to be committed to the continuation of that.
Yeah, thank you, Cassandra. Yeah, I'm at First Christian Church on Fulton Road, and this church has been in Denton for, I'm told, over 150 years. So, and have been delighted to join here as pastor. For a number of years now. I've been in ministry almost 20 years now. And for a lot of that time, I've been doing either interim or transitional work with churches, or even some hospital and hospice chaplaincy. So I'm delighted to move to Denton and be planted and stay in one place for a long time now. But during that time, certainly have done ministry with organizations such as Friends of the Family, or with individuals who have been the victims of either, as you say, psychological, emotional, or physical or sexual abuse. And it is certainly damaging. And I think as believers, we believe that God does not want God's creation hurt or injured, and to be able to say that that extends that extends to individual people too. That if we believe that each and every person was created in the image of God, that God does not like that image of God messed around with. So I tend to pull really hard on that first creation story in Genesis, in talking with people who have a low self-esteem, who might be be thinking, well, I deserve this, or who have been gaslighted so much that they just don't have that strength to move on, and say, look, we hear from one of our earliest and oldest stories that God says, let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and that God created humankind in God's own image, and said it's very good. And there's times when just by saying those words that that'll sort of break through, and you'll see someone cry, and it's like, God could love even me, and it's like, of course, and you are worthy of care and love and grace, and how do we how do we do that for you? And so Scripture is always that conversation back and forth. I mean, sometimes we hear that the Bible talked about almost as if it's an instruction manual, and we can just open it up and see to go through points A, B, and C, and instead it's more of that conversation. So if someone says, well, I'm supposed to forgive him, and Bible says I'm supposed to forgive 70 times 70. But on the other hand, in that same gospel of Matthew earlier on, Jesus tells the disciples that you're not supposed to give what's holy to the dogs. You're not supposed to throw pearls before the swine, because they will trample them and then turn on you and maul you. And if someone can grasp that concept, that they are as worthy as pearls, that they are valuable, and that they are not to be trampled on, and forgiveness can come from a distance. It does not have to be in that same house where they are in danger. But I also realize it can be a very tough decision to leave or to seek that help. And oftentimes close friends and family can lose patience with someone who may talk about possibly leaving and then go back and leave and go back. And so sometimes it's really important to have that one or two people that can sort of stick with them and understand that it's a very hard decision to make that step, but it's an important decision to make before they end up in real danger or be one of those horrible statistics, Cassandra, that you quoted about how many people are killed by domestic violence. So, but that's where for us in the community that work and try and support people and save people as far as getting them to safety, it's important not only for those individuals, but their families and their children and those that love them as well. So I'm delighted to be a part of this ministry, of getting to know more about it myself, but being at a place that already is so closely linked with Friends of the Family that hosts the rehearsal space for Lori's Joy, which is a choir that is made up of people who have been served or who love Friends of the Family and are connected in some way, and look forward to other ways that we can partner in ministry together.
Yeah, and after you get completely settled in, we hope that you can come back and be a part of the choir rehearsals and sing with us. We enjoyed you joining in a couple of weeks ago, but we appreciate First Christian for allowing us that space and their minister of music to direct our agency choir, Friends of the Family, for inviting us when you had block parties and events where we could set up a table and distribute information. We created some bags for the fall festival that we were able to bring over that had information in them. So thank you for what you do. And one of the things that you brought up about it being a tough decision, so often some of us can say, well, if it were me, or, I would leave, but it's not that easy. And on average, it takes about 7 times for specifically a woman to leave before they make that final exit from that relationship. We do a presentation that I would love to do at any of your churches called In Her Shoes, that takes you through a real life scenario of what it looks like to have your world turned upside down by being a victim of domestic violence, and some critical and quick choices that you have to make that are not easily made. And when you add to that having children, pet, and extended family, it is a tough decision. So being respectful of someone who you may counsel with or refer to us and they decide to stay, we don't want to add trauma to trauma. We don't want to exert power and control that they're already under by trying to force them into a decision for which they're not ready to make. And so it is our role and responsibility to be conscious that it is a tough decision, and just provide the people with whom we are giving information with the best available information for them to make the best decisions for themselves. So let's take a quick drive down to Dallas to my friend, my sister, Lady Ella Thorpe, who is, Ella, we need your video to come back on, who is the First Lady of the Berea Church in Lancaster. She and her husband, Bishop Thorpe, a long, 16 years or so in relationship with them. And one of the ways in which we are connected is our passion for helping and giving support to victims of domestic violence. And so tell us a little bit, Lady Ella, about the work that you do and any encouragement that you can give to the people who are more directly related to our county and our services, the benefits of these relationships that we have.
Good evening to everyone. Thank you, Cassandra, for inviting me to share this afternoon. We are located in southern Dallas County. However, we sometimes spill over to Tarrant, Collin, Denton, and Ellis County. Our church is in southern Dallas County, and we live in Ellis County in a little city called Red Oak, which is expanding very much these days. But I'm just thankful to see pastors, leaders now. It's been very hard for us to have, especially being in southern Dallas County and the African American pastors here, male pastors. It's been really hard for us to pull them in. We kept praying and we kept just doing what we do to help out in the area of domestic violence and abuse and sexual assaults. And so we were able to pull some of them in slowly, and it has made a big difference because they were open to seeing some of the things that were happening in their churches, and it kind of spilled over, with the agencies. And so just by women speaking up and having someone to go to in the ministry in our churches. I work closely with the women's ministry leader, and we work with the Family Place, we work with Genesis, we work with nonprofit agencies that are and faith-based agencies, small, medium, and large. And we have a really good group in the southern sector of pastors and pastors' wives that pool together to work and to try to make a difference. In our work with the Family Place, they provide seminars and workshops for us to go to, and lunches that they have for luncheons that they have for monies that would come in for domestic violence that would help specifically the area, the southern sector, as we call it. Genesis work with them, and as well, they have come to the point to have a First Ladies Bruncheon every year. And that bruncheon, we get, of course, a speaker that's well known, sometimes, in many areas, but a speaker that's well known. And that money, all of those funds go directly to the area of domestic violence for the Southern sector. So we are so grateful to have large, medium, and small agencies working with us in the faith-based community. Um, we what we try to do on our level, of course, we've attended the event, an event that you have and have had in Denton County, as far as dealing with, you had I guess it was a choir. I can't think of the formal name of it, but we were able to go to that and support, as well as you had Dr. Renee Hornbuckle to speak at one of your events. So we try to pull in people who really have a heart for it, and to teach, train, and mentor those that may not necessarily have a heart, but they know that something needs to be done and they're willing to do it, as well as just buy into the efforts that we are trying to do in this area. We've been able to get faith-based leaders from almost every denomination and non-denominational area, African American, Caucasian, and Hispanics. In the ministry that we have, we found that we just don't want to give money, have the big events and give the money, or doing that. We want to be like in the middle of what's happening. So what we have done is that we've created an atmosphere or partnership or relationship with the bigger agencies, Family Place, Genesis, by going into their seminars that they have, and we provided lunches for those seminars and those activities that they have. So we formed a relationship with the people that work there, including the agency CEOs. Family Place is Genesis is the CEO there is Jan Langbian, and the Family Place CEO is Paige Flink. So we formed a relationship try to go in and start a relationship with the top so that it can filter down to the bottom. And we have really been blessed to be connected in a vital way, that I can just get on the phone when I have a situation, and I can call direct people because I've developed a relationship. Of course, we give monies. We have certain projects that we do to raise money so that we can pour into these organizations in specific areas. But we found that the relationship with the organizations, leaders, pull us to a point where if I'm in need, and I think we had remember a situation where I needed help, and you were the one that I called because it was an area that dealt with where I didn't know. We had an incident where a young lady had been assaulted, and I wasn't too sure about how the police chief stood in a certain city. And I knew that that chief had been in Denton, and I was calling you to see, how you could connect me and what you thought. So it's just good to connect all the way around, because you never know who you're going to need. We have people that we connect with outside of agencies who are just connected in a way that if we need a room, a hotel room, call them, and they are just ready to help us out until we can get to that step, to get them in contact with someone at one of the agencies. So it's been it's a hard work. You have to have a HEART to work in this area, and so it's been a blessing. I'm blessed to have my husband to just be a part of it, because so many pastors' wives, and let me just say, we have a really good group of pastors and bishops in this area who really support their wives. And so we're very well connected, and what we don't have, somebody else may have. And that's not the case in every area. So thank you for the awareness that you bring and the things that you do in this area. It really makes a difference. And I just hope that we would get to a point as faith-based organizations and other or non-faith-based organizations where we can pool our resources a little bit more together. We're not too well connected when it goes outside of our little area that we're in. So I'm just hoping that with this, I'm very grateful to be on a part of this conversation. And I am very grateful to connect with someone that's outside of my group. And thank you for that.
Thank you, and thank you to each of you. I'm going to read a couple of things that we kind of talked about that summarizes some of the myths around church, what churches often believe about domestic violence. And when we talk about the goals of Faithful Freedom, with one being to raise awareness of domestic violence in congregations across the county and make our services known to any potential victims. So some of the myths that you've kind of touched on without even us going into this is the myth that it doesn't happen in Christian homes. You've already addressed that, to know that it does happen within Christian homes. It does happen within our churches. We've talked and touched on this myth number 2 in this article: submission will solve the problem. Well, total submission and continuation in a situation that escalate to an end of life is that submission is not going to resolve that problem, because the bottom line, the abuser's desire is to have power and control, which is the root cause of domestic violence and sexual assault. We've identified that, and through our conversation, that it's not the woman's fault. That Kristen, you talk about, being loved and being valued and considering yourself as a pearl, not to be thrown to swines, and that regardless, there is no excuse or reason for which a woman should be subject to abuse, or a man and have be violated physically, sexually, and could result in death. One of the fourth myths in this is that domestic abuse isn't as bad as domestic violence. We talked about that and identifying it at the level of verbal and psychological, because it can be, and often is, damaging as the physical violence. And then looking at the myth: if an abuser is truly sorry and forgiven, the relationship should be reconciled. Well, if the abuser is not willing to take accountability, and there is an opportunity for a safe exit from that. And I say safe exit because the statistics show that a woman is likely to lose her life within 2 weeks after leaving than at any other time in the relationship, at a rate of 75%. When I first saw that, I thought, how overwhelming, is that? And so, looking at that particular myth, we need to talk about what are some of the ways in which we can, speak to the abusers and make them accountable. Well, we have a program. All of our services that we provide are free. Counseling, shelter, legal assistance. We help fill out forms such that there's any medical treatment that the person is to receive, that can be reimbursed or paid for through what's called the Crime Victims Compensation Act. One of the programs that we offer, the only one for which there is a fee, is our Battering Intervention and Prevention Program. And most of the persons in that program, it's a 30-week psychoeducational courses or classes and group meetings that they go through to take accountability. And the Justice Department, along with our agency, feel that the accountability of paying for that class should be on the onus of the abuser. Sometimes I hear people say, well, if most of the ones that are in the program are there because of being ordered to be there by their probation officer or maybe a judge. But if you have abusers within your congregation and they come and said, Pastor Jake, I really want to be accountable for my behavior, I really don't want to be abusive, then you can refer them to that battering intervention and prevention program. They can self-enroll. You don't have to be there as a result of being court ordered to do so. So for those who are genuine and wanting to have in place, a system that's going to help them to be more accountable, refer them to our battering intervention program. It's on an average about $30 a week. Some people say, well, what happens if that person doesn't have a ability to pay? Well, we can talk about that and work that out. But when you look at how many times we tend to go to Starbucks, McDonald's, and other places, who's going to miss that $30 really? So what's important. And so we encourage in increasing awareness to make known that service is available for the abusers. On average, 1 in 4 women in our community will be victims of domestic violence in their lives, and their freedom will be taken away. They will be held like prisoners in their own homes while their abuser exerts control over their work schedule, their bank account, cuts them off from friends and family, all while inflicting physical and emotional pain. Reaching these victims can be hard because their abuser has kept them so isolated. But at those times when they have an out, and that out is reaching you as their faith leader, then it is imperative. And you have acknowledged by being a part of this to know how to best counsel with your parishioners and make them aware of free services that we offer through Denton County Friends of the Family. I'm going to go around and ask if you just make a sentence and closing remark that you would want others in the community to know about the importance of being a part of this Faith for Freedom, that where we are committed to raising awareness, we're committed to establishing and building a relationship of trust, and to provide in any way we can services to include in-kind items, as well as maybe set aside once a month, once a quarter, a special offering. I tell people when I'm not a fundraiser, but I think somewhere in my former life I may have been, because I tell people I'm not asking for your life savings, but I am asking you to help us save a life. And that means you have $2 to give. We're going to stretch that $2 as far as we can to help provide services. I'm not asking you to give all of your time, but that 1 hour that you can give, maybe only once a month, could be an hour that we can invest with our experts on how to help someone to save their lives. So thank you. So Lady Ella, give us one closing remark about the importance of being a part of Faith for Freedom.
I think the importance is that we really need to work to develop relationships across the board. Relationships are important, and sometimes we don't do that enough, but no matter where you are, we can still connect.
Pastor Jake.
Well, I would say that don't communities of faith have a real opportunity here to be people of intervention, an opportunity for healing. So insofar as it is possible for us to be a part of one another's lives, to encourage one another that the God that you know does not want you to be a punching bag for anybody else, and the scriptures do not condone that sort of activity and behavior. Let us be, again, a part of the solution.
Thank you. Miss Stephanie.
I would say don't be afraid to get help. And for all of us leaders, when people do come to us, don't dismiss it. Get all the information you can and be there for that person and refer them to where they can get the help they need.
Thank you. My new friend, Kristen.
Well, I would say that our faith is supposed to lead us to be free to live that abundant life, that we are not supposed to be held down and controlled by other people, that we are supposed to live abundantly. And in that abundance, I mean, so many of us can give, as you say, even just a little bit, or, I've already been introduced to the upscale resale thrift store, and I know that some of my abundance will be going there to help bless somebody else. So there are those ways that that we can give back. So I give thanks for the ministry that is done by Friends of the Family.
For those of you who may not know, Upscale Resale is our thrift store. And with our thrift store, all of our net proceeds go back into us providing the free services to our clients. And also we provide opportunities for our clients to receive what they need for their households through a voucher program each month. We don't have a middle management company. And so we take all of that so that we can continue the work that we do. And so we accept your donations of new to gently used clothing and household items Monday through Saturday, 11 to 6. That was a commercial. Thank you. Pastor Chambers, my buddy.
I think the importance of this will build relationships that will teach us our worth and our values as men and women.
Absolutely. And real quick, we are honoring the living legacies of 4 African-American women this afternoon. And when I look at ancestors, I look at them as persons who would want us to live in the fullness of life and to be free of abuse and harm and discrimination. And so what's happening this afternoon, you want to say a little bit about that, Pastor Chambers?
Well, we're honoring here in the city of Denton 4 African-American women who made strides, lived through racism in Denton, lived through the Quaker Town movement. Just to listen to their stories are certainly a blessing as to how they persevered and still alive today. 2 of those ladies are 88, one 89, and the other is 93 years old. And so we'll be honoring them today for the work, mostly for their perseverance, what they've come through and what they're still able to stand against. And so we're grateful for that today.
Thank you. Again, thank you for those of you who are here to help us to relaunch our Faith for Freedom. For those who may be listening in who have been and are a part of Faith for Freedom, we thank you. We will be highlighting different congregations as we move this along, and for every opportunity that we have to partner with you to provide information. Again, going back to what we said, such that the parishioners shall not perish, we're happy to do so. Again, I'm Cassandra Berry, community educator for Denton County Friends of the Family. If you have questions or interests about Faith for Freedom, I will ask that the person monitoring our comments will put my contact information in there. My number is 940-387-5131, extension 241. And my email is cberry@dcfof.org. Thank you to each of you for being a part of this initial launch. And I look forward to working with you individually as well as collectively. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy this Juneteenth and Father's Day weekend. And I appreciate each and every one of you on behalf of Denton County Friends of the Family. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Cassandra.
you.